I shouldn't have been driving that night. Everyone told me that afterward, like it wasn't something I already knew. The weather warnings had been clear. Heavy snowfall, low visibility. Road closures likely, but I was tired, and the thought of another night in that small roadside motel made my skin crawl. I told myself I'd driven in snow before, that the storm wouldn't be that bad. I left just after sunset. At first, the road was fine. Snow fell steadily, but the plows had already passed through. My headlights cut a narrow tunnel through the dark, and the world outside felt distant and unreal. As I climbed higher into the mountains, the temperature dropped fast. The snow thickened, clinging to the windshield faster than the wipers could clear it. That was when my phone lost signal. No bars, no service, just the time glowing faintly on the screen. 8:42 p.m. The road narrowed. Trees closed in on both sides, their branches heavy with snow, bending low like they were trying to block my way. I slowed down. The radio crackled, then went completely silent. That's when I saw the car. It was parked on the shoulder, half buried in snow, hazard lights off, engine dark. There were no footprints leading away from it. Just a shape swallowed by white. I passed it slowly, glancing inside. Empty. The driver's door was wide open. I told myself someone must have already gotten a ride picked up before the storm got worse. Still, I drove the next few miles with my shoulders tight and my hands locked on the steering wheel. The snow became a blizzard. The road disappeared beneath it, leaving only faint tire tracks to follow. Then my car slid. Not a hard skid, just enough to send my heart into my throat. I corrected, but the tires didn't respond. A moment later, the engine sputtered, then died. The headlights stayed on, illuminating nothing but swirling snow and the dark wall of trees ahead. I tried the ignition again. Nothing. The cold crept in fast, the kind of cold that doesn't wait politely. It presses in through the glass, through the metal, through your clothes. I checked my phone again. Still no signal. I sat there for a long moment, listening to the wind push against the car, the snow tapping softly on the roof like fingertips. Then I saw movement in the headlights. At first, I thought it was just the snow blowing sideways, but the shape was wrong. Too solid, too deliberate. Someone stepped into the light. They stood at the edge of the road, just beyond the snowbanks, a tall figure bundled in dark winter clothes, their face hidden by a hood. They didn't wave. They didn't move closer. They just stood there. Relief washed over me, despite the fear. Another person meant help, a phone, a ride. I rolled the window down a few inches, cold air slicing into the car. "Hey," I called out. "My car died. Do you have a phone?" The figure tilted its head slightly. Then, slowly, it shook its head. I frowned. "Do you need help?" I asked. The figure raised one arm and pointed down the road, back the way I'd come. I followed its gesture, then looked back. The road behind me was empty. No footprints, no tracks. Just smooth, untouched snow. My chest tightened. "How did you get here?" I asked. The figure took one step forward, close enough now that I could see its boots. They were clean, no snow on them at all. I rolled the window up. The figure stopped. For a moment, neither of us moved. Snow continued to fall between us. Then the figure leaned closer to the car, head angling toward the glass. I couldn't see its face, only darkness beneath the hood. It raised its hand and tapped once on my window. Soft, careful. I slowly shook my head. The figure straightened. Then it smiled. I could see it now. A pale curve where a mouth should be, too wide, too still. It stepped back into the darkness beyond the headlights and vanished. Not walking away, just gone. I sat there shaking until the cold became unbearable. When I finally stepped out of the car, my boots sank into deep, untouched snow. There were no footprints, none leading to the road, none leading away. I walked for what felt like forever, until I reached a ranger station miles later, frostbitten and exhausted. They found my car the next morning. The officer told me something I still think about every winter. No one else had been reported missing on that road, and no one had abandoned a car there, except me. Thanks for watching. If you have a story you'd like to share, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more. Stay safe out there. The cabin wasn't supposed to be isolated. That was the whole point of renting it. It sat at the edge of a small winter resort town, close enough that you could see the glow of streetlights through the trees at night. Close enough that help shouldn't have been far. I arrived just before dusk, snow falling lightly, the kind that feels peaceful instead of threatening. The owner had left the key in a lockbox and texted me the code. Everything felt normal. Inside, the cabin smelled like old wood and dust. Cozy, but barely. I turned on the heater, unpacked my bag, and made soup on the small stove while the wind picked up outside. By the time night fell, the temperature dropped hard. I noticed it because the heater kept clicking on and off, struggling more than it should have. The air felt colder near the floor, like something was pulling heat downward. I turned the thermostat up and wrapped myself in a blanket. The windows began to frost over from the edges inward. That's when I heard the knocking. Not loud, not urgent. 3 slow taps on the wall behind the couch. I froze, spoon halfway to my mouth. The sound came again. Same place, same rhythm. I told myself it was the pipes. Old cabins make noise in winter. Expansion, contraction. Normal things with reasonable explanations. Still, I stood up and checked the back door, locked. I checked the front door, locked. The windows were sealed tight, frost creeping across the glass-like veins. I went back to the couch and sat down. The heater shut off. The silence that followed felt heavy, like the cabin was holding its breath. The knocking returned, this time closer. Not on the wall, on the floor beneath my feet. One tap, then another. I stood up slowly, heart racing, and backed away. "Hello," I called out, hating how small my voice sounded. No response. The heater clicked on again, blowing weakly. I went to bed early, telling myself I was tired, that the cold was making me jumpy. Sometime after midnight, I woke up shivering. The cabin was freezing. I could see my breath. The heater was off again. I reached for my phone to use the flashlight. No signal. The battery icon blinked red before the screen went dark. That's when I heard footsteps. Inside the cabin, slow, careful steps moving from the living room toward the bedroom door. I lay perfectly still, staring at the darkness. The steps stopped right outside my door. I felt the cold intensify, pressing in around me, sinking into my chest like an icy weight. Something brushed the door lightly. Not a knock, more like a hand resting there. A voice spoke softly from the other side. "You're letting it escape." My skin prickled with a fear I'd never known. "What?" I whispered, my voice barely a tremor. "The warmth," the voice replied, its tone hollow and chilling. "You shouldn't waste it." The handle turned slightly, then stopped. The footsteps retreated. The heater came back on suddenly, blasting hot air with a startling roar. By morning, the cabin was warm again. Too warm, uncomfortably so. The frost on the windows had melted, leaving streaks of water running down the glass like tears. I didn't bother with breakfast. I packed up my things in a frantic rush and left as fast as I possibly could. Later that week, driven by a morbid curiosity I couldn't shake, I checked the rental listing online. The cabin was no longer available in winter. I scrolled through the reviews, my stomach twisting. Most were normal, but a few mentioned heating issues. And then I saw it. One review, it mentioned voices. It had been removed. I was house-sitting for a friend when it all happened. They lived out on the edge of a small town right where the pavement gives way to packed snow and dirt. Beyond their house, there was nothing but open land and trees, a vast expanse of white that stretched into the darkness during the long winter nights. They told me it would get cold. They told me the power might flicker during a storm. What they didn't warn me about was the quiet. The first couple of nights were completely uneventful. Snow just fell, steady and soft, piling up against the windows and doors. I kept the lights down low, the fireplace going, and I actually started to enjoy the feeling of isolation. It was peaceful, but on the third night, the storm got serious. The wind picked up, howling and throwing snow against the house in heavy waves. The windows rattled, and the world outside just vanished into a swirling white blur. Then, around 1 in the morning, the power went out. Everything just snapped off, plunging the house into almost total darkness. The fire in the fireplace became the only light, casting long, dancing shadows across the walls. I grabbed my phone, but of course, no signal, and the battery was already dying from the cold. So I moved closer to the fire and just waited, listening to the storm pound against the house. Snow would slide down the roof in these heavy sheets, a constant, almost rhythmic sound. And that's when I noticed something strange. Outside the living room window, the snow wasn't moving like the rest of it. everywhere else. The wind was pushing it sideways, but the snow directly underneath the window, it was rising and falling, slowly, like a chest breathing. I leaned in closer, my heart starting to pound. The shape was subtle at first, just this gentle lift and fall under the smooth surface of the snow. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it was just drifting, settling in a weird way. But then it inhaled. The snow lifted higher than before, held there for a moment, and then sank back down. I stumbled back. The fire crackled loudly, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. At that exact moment, the breathing outside stopped. The snow went completely still. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like forever. Then the breathing started again, but this time it was closer, right up against the window. The snow pressed against the glass, flattening out as if something underneath was shifting its weight. A faint outline started to form. It wasn't clear enough to make out what it was, but it was wrong. It was too large to be an animal, and the movement was too deliberate to be the wind. And then a handprint appeared on the glass. Not from my side, from the outside. The snow fell away from it, slowly revealing pale skin underneath. The fingers were long, pressed flat against the window, leaving streaks of frost as they moved. I just shook my head, whispering, "No." The hand slid down, disappearing back under the snow. A moment later, a face rose into view. Not the whole thing, just enough to see two hollow impressions where eyes should have been. Its mouth opened slightly, and a fog of condensation spread across the glass as it exhaled. The snow around it lifted and fell one more time. I ran. I sprinted to the bedroom, slammed the door, and locked it, piling a chair against the knob for good measure. I stayed there until morning, wrapped in blankets, listening to the wind and the soft, terrifying sound of shifting snow. When daylight finally broke, the storm had passed. The world was quiet and bright. I crept out and checked the window. The snowbank was perfectly smooth, undisturbed. No handprints. No sign of anything ever being there. But just before I left, I saw something near the base of the house. A shallow depression in the snow, the exact shape of a body, and it was facing the window.